And when I welcomed the pastors, here's what I said. In my 40 years of ministry, the experience of gathering with pastors has generally been around one of three themes. When preachers get together, we either are called together to support a political campaign. You know, somebody's running for office and they want the churches to get out and vote, and they want the politicians to come speak to the people. And so from time to time, at least 3 or 4 times a year, we're invited, especially the larger churches, to gatherings about politics. One. The second type of meeting is generally protest. You know, something happened, something went wrong, somebody shot somebody, and we're angry. And of course, the pastors want to get together and, you know, fight over who gets on TV and mobilize the people and go protest. And that's a part of our tradition. And it's an important part of our tradition because there are times when we just have to raise our voices and remind America that things still aren't the way they ought to be. And if no one says anything, nothing gets better. So we're used to that. We know how to do that. The third reason for gathering is generally for preaching. And so we gather at Hampton University, or we gather at St. Philip's Church, or we go somewhere and somebody that we think knows how to preach shows up and preaches, and the rest of us steal the sermon, take it home, and make it our own. So it's politics, protest, and preaching. That's why we normally gather. And unfortunately, after 40 years of electing African Americans to office, we still find large segments of our community just stuck. After perfecting the art of protest, we have learned that we respond like we did in Ferguson and like we did in Florida for a few weeks or sometimes a few months, and then we go back home and it's business as usual. And with all the preaching we have and the large churches that we're building, we still find that our people are in trouble. And what I concluded some time ago was that what we needed, in addition to the politics and the protest and the preaching, was a real strategy that could engage our people on a very personal level for the purpose of financial and economic empowerment. When I came to this church, I told the committee that interviewed me that I had 3 focal areas of my ministry: spiritual growth, educational excellence, and economic empowerment. You know, my personal belief is if you have a relationship with God, a well-developed mind, and access to money, you're free. I don't care what they call you. I don't care what party's in power. I really don't care what your philosophy is. You've got to have a relationship with God. You've got to have an articulate capacity, and you've got to have some capital, some money, and access to capital. And that constitutes freedom. Without that, then you look free, but you're not free. And what I discovered in the first 15 years of my ministry here was that even when I used the terms economic empowerment, I was operating at a level that was still one step removed from the day-to-day realities of my own members. And so economic empowerment, pursuant to everything I had thought and preached and taught and read, had to do with building housing. We built housing. If you go around this neighborhood today, you will see over 700 units of new housing that we either built or we were responsible for building. We built half, and we developed a plan that facilitated the building of the other half. Anybody who grew up here and comes back now, they don't recognize the neighborhood. This was the poorest and the most dangerous neighborhood in Central Jersey. Nothing like Montclair. Amen. And I decided I was going to make it look more like Montclair. But we built houses. We created a health clinic around the corner on Howe Lane. There is an 80,000 square foot medical facility, which when I got here was an abandoned warehouse. And that abandoned warehouse was the beginning of the decline of the industrial area across the street, which had hundreds of jobs, which, if those jobs went away, would really decimate the whole neighborhood. And so we bought that warehouse, not really knowing what was going to happen with the warehouse, what we would do with the warehouse, but we knew that we had to save that particular warehouse. It was the best looking building in the area. It housed the former Home News newspaper, which moved out, and we knew that if we didn't save that this neighborhood would be even more dangerous and there'd be more poverty and more violence. So we bought it. We partnered with the Catholic Hospital. We created a primary care health facility, and now about 20,000 people per month are served there. You can get everything there except an overnight stay in a hospital. It's just a marvelous facility. And so we were proud of that. We took an abandoned bank building that was about to become a regional headquarters for pornography. We turned that temporarily into a youth center, our administrative offices. Today, it's a 64-unit senior citizen housing complex. It's affordable. We've got 5 units designated for homeless veterans, and on the first floor, the County Board of Social Services does their business there. So we're happy about that. Next door to that, we're going to renovate another small building for a community center that you'll hear about some other time. And then we built this sanctuary. I mean, there were 13 houses we had to buy and relocate families. It cost us about $23 million in total. And so we were growing institutionally. We formed a credit union that has $2 million in assets. We have 4 other nonprofit corporations, 2 for housing, 1 for economic development. We formed a technology training center. So we're doing all these programs. At one point, our church had about 50 staff people. Our CDC had 85. So we had a staff of 135 people coming to work every day. You know, our budget was about $20 million. So we're moving. But what we discovered along the way, for instance, was that when we built 124 condominiums across the street and sold them for $65,000, $75,000, and $85,000. The $85,000 condo across the street was a duplex with a spiral staircase, 3 bedrooms, and a loft. We sold them for $85,000. Today they're worth $235,000. But the majority of the people for whom we built them could not qualify because of bad credit. Just couldn't qualify. And when I say bad credit, I mean bad credit. I'm talking about in the 300s, you know, in the 400s. I got on the board of the bank around the corner when I first got here, which is really where I learned more about money from a little bank around the corner than I did anywhere else, because I never took a course in finance, budgeting, nothing. I mean, my biggest course in money was running from bill collectors, as I confess in my book. But around the corner from the church, there was a 1-branch bank, $100 million in assets. They asked me to come on the board, and I thought this was a good chance to be involved in an institution that could help our community. And when I got on the board, we started a micro-lending program where members of the church and community, screened by volunteers from the church and the CDC, could qualify to get a business loan up to $15,000, even if they had bad credit, just based on character. If we said, trust them, the bank trusted them. And we began building out our economic development from that position. But I was so embarrassed because every month the bank would have a list of people that owed money on their credit cards that the bank felt would never pay. And so we would vote as a board to charge off those credit cards and sell them to the bill collectors and let them have the problem. And every single month I saw good, Holy Ghost-filled, sanctified First Baptist members. And my first inclination was to say, oh, no, don't charge this off. You know, she's a good member of our church. And I said, boy, you better shut your mouth. Let them charge that thing off. And increasingly, I discovered that, Increasingly, I discovered that members of my own congregation had missed all of this growth and expansion and development, and the church was doing well. The church's finances were doing well. Our community development corporations were doing, the institutions were doing well. And so from the outside, it really looked like uplift. In fact, what I'm most proud of in terms of our community process is that in the building of all of our houses, in the development even of this sanctuary, no family was displaced such that they had to move because they couldn't stay, or they had to increase their cost of living. Everybody who wanted to stay in the neighborhood stayed in the neighborhood. Anybody who wanted to move could move, and the people that we relocated so that their cost of living would not go up. If they had a mortgage, their mortgage wouldn't go up. If they didn't have a mortgage, they wouldn't have a mortgage. So by 2005, I'm telling you what's not in the book because it's an insult to tell people what's already available. By 2005, it was clear that our economic empowerment focus had to really deal with the nitty-gritty realities of our people in the church, of our people in the community. And just based on my own experience of having nice clothes, nice cars, nice apartment, nice furniture, and being dead broke, what I really began looking at was consumerism and budgeting and waste and just ignorance as related to money. And rather than focus on the approach that most materials use, you can get all kinds of materials like we did. We used hands-on banking, we used Money Smart, we used some Crown Ministries materials, and we found with the materials that were available, either they were great financially but didn't get to the root cause of why we spend so much money, or they got to the root cause like Dave Ramsey, but they didn't deal with the cultural peculiarities of African Americans. Or they dealt with the cultural issues but didn't deal with a proactive strategy. They just kind of dealt with moaning, groaning, whining, and complaining. And so what we felt we needed here, that we developed into this process, it took about 5 years, was something that was biblically sound, culturally relevant, but still inclusive, that was microscopically personal, but not so individualistic that we lose our sense of community. And so what you're going to hear today is really not just content, but strategy. It's not just about learning how to teach content because, frankly, as I said, I'm not a financial expert, but I've written a book, we've got a workbook, I travel around the country, we've got websites. This is not really about money. This is about taking control of our lives and using money to reach our life goals. If money management is the goal, then you'll learn to manage money, but you still won't be able to figure out why so many NBA players go bankrupt. I mean, they hire money managers. If financial literacy is the goal, then you'll never understand why the people who are most financially literate drove this country into financial ruin. We had a global meltdown because most literate people got greedy and started selling bad products, and we kind of went along with it. So you'll hear this description, but I have taken all of what I learned when I was organizing in Montclair as a young man, all of what I learned in doing politics and running political campaigns, all of what I've learned as a pastor, teacher, preacher, all of those things I kind of put together into a strategy that we call Dfree. And the word Dfree is meaningful because we just couldn't get people to fix their lips to say, I'm drowning in debt. And so we took the kind of negative out of the strategy and tried to flip it into a positive. And what we discovered here after a while was that the same people who would not admit, either by showing up at an event or by just signing a pledge, they would not admit that they were drowning in debt. They're now willing to say, I'm trying to be Dfree. So there was some marketing and psychological thinking behind developing a brand, and also there's a specific emphasis on the free part. The focus is not on the debt or the delinquencies or the deficits. The focus is on being free from paycheck to paycheck living, being free from running from bill collectors every Tuesday and Thursday night as I was, being free from saying to somebody, I don't know where my money goes. I used to say that to my dad, I don't know where my money goes. And Dad would say, well, don't leave home while you're sleeping. Your money goes where you take it. But just the act, we've seen transformation in the lives of people just by going through the act of writing down what they spend for a month. Just write it down. oh my God, I didn't realize I was spending that much. We have seen people have an epiphany when they realize they really don't need 800 TV stations. They probably only watch 9, and they're paying for premium in excess of what they use, and they could save that money and take it somewhere else. I got an email from a young man in Louisville who sold his iPhone 6S. He decided he didn't need a 6S. Went back to the iPhone 4. It did everything he needed. He took the $600 that he made off the iPhone 6S, put it in a bank account. It was the first time he had a $600 savings account. And we can make all the speeches we want about African Americans having $1.1 trillion, and if every black person in America would put $1 here, all those grand speeches that we hear at conventions and conferences and on TV, and it does not connect with the day-to-day realities of the average person until we get down to the point of realizing that some of us spend enough money on Starbucks to shift that money and put it into an insurance policy so that we can leave a legacy for our children. Until we get there, it's just talk. It's just talk. So the median net worth of the average African American today is around $6,000, 6 plus a couple of pennies. The median of the average white family is $120,000. So how do we close that gap? Well, the easy answer is insurance. We don't want to talk about insurance. We don't think about insurance, but the reality is a person who's addicted to cigarettes or Starbucks could close the gap in wealth between blacks and whites and their family by giving up either and investing differently. Just Starbucks or cigarettes. So we have a young lady in our church who comes from a single-parent home, and when her dad died recently, much to her surprise and her mother's surprise, her dad left an insurance policy for her. She inherited over $200,000 from her dad. He now, despite what he didn't do while he was alive, he now has closed the gap for his daughter between African American and white American net worth. So this is having the conversation. I welcome you to it. We have streamers now. Hello, streamers. You came on late, but you're in time. I was just talking till you got here. And I want streamers, if you would just type in who you are so that we can welcome you officially, we'll do that. So fasten your seatbelts. Understand, we're not going to teach you how to be financial experts. We're going to teach you how to be Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, leading people out of slavery into freedom. All right?